Henery the Engine, Part 2. 8:15 on the dot, sighed the station master happily, putting his big watch back into his pocket. He was so happy he winked at the Lady Mayoress, then noticed that everybody was looking, so pretended to blow his nose on his red, white and blue handkerchief instead. The mayor rubbed his big round stomach and set off for the cafeteria. The crowd followed him in for coffee and chocolate biscuits. They couldn't have any sandwiches because Aaron Burgess had taken the last packet, cheese and tomato. He had a little bite in the guard's van to see if they were all right. They were super. Henery was a bit short of breath to start with. Yeah. He went trotting briskly between the houses. Most of them had encouraging banners hanging from the windows. "Come on, Henery! Good old Henery!" etc. I'm not old, thought Henery. After all, I'm only 3. That's the secret of a long run. Take it nice and easy to start with. Deep, slow breaths. Give the muscles time to warm up. David got out his map. Scotland is up this end, Jonathan. Look, where it says north, and here's Edinburgh near the sea on the right-hand side, in the east. Jonathan tried his compass to make sure. Yes, David, you're absolutely right. We have to go to the northeast. We'd better hurry if we're going to get there for lunch. So they rang up Aaron on the phone to warn him they were going to go very fast soon. "Hello, Aaron," said Jonathan. "How are you?" Aaron replied, his mouth crammed full of boiled egg. He'd nearly finished his picnic, and they'd hardly started. "May I have a word?" asked David. "Of course you may," said Jonathan. "You have to be very polite in an engine. It's a very difficult job, and you can't afford arguments. We're going to go very fast now, Aaron, so hang on." "Righto," said Aaron at last, when he'd finally swallowed his egg. "I mean, Roger." "Who's Roger?" wondered Henery, making his wheels spin round like propellers and gritting his teeth for a great effort. "Don't know anyone called Roger, but I'm sure they know what they're doing." Charlie was serving drinks to the important people in the restaurant. "2 bottles of minty, 4 Coca-Cola, a banana, and an extra big pineapple squidge, you said, sir?" she asked a horrible, bald man in a black suit. No, he said irritably. "I want 4 tomatoes, a jug of Adam's ale, and a small bucket of ice cubes, and I want it now." Charlie thought the man was very rude and threw him out of the window. He landed with a great splash in a little stream full of ducks and a swan. The swan pecked his ear, and the duck splashed mud all over his black suit. Charlie waved her lace hanky at him. "I don't care if I never work again," she thought. "Nobody should talk to me like that." Quite right, too. Of course, Charlie had to recount this adventure to Aaron in the guard's van, and then to David and Jonathan in the engine. Henery eavesdropped on the story, and was very pleased the rude man had been thrown out of the window, but also that he had landed safely. "I should think he'll be more polite in future," he was thinking, when all of a sudden it felt as if he was running on cobbles, and there was a terrible rattling noise. Gadangs, 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 gadangs went his wheels. He peered down and nearly died of fright. Between the rails, miles and miles below, were little ships. He was on a bridge. David and Jonathan noticed the strange noise too, and hastily, but politely, said goodbye to Charlie and hung out of the window in amazement. Where can we be, they wondered. After a quick try with the compass and map, they asked Henery. After all, he could see where he was going. Did he know where he was going? "I'm sorry, I don't," said Henery. A seagull landed on his head and shouted in his ear, "This is the Forth Bridge, you silly engine! Edinburgh is the other way!" Henery had been running so fast, he'd overshot Edinburgh on the bypass. There was only one thing to do: reverse. Now, David knew the brakes were going on because he put them on. Jonathan knew the brakes were going on because he was beside him, and they had telephoned Aaron in his guard's van, so he knew too. Everybody knew, except Charlie in the restaurant car and the very important people sitting in it. Screech! Went the brakes, and sparks flew from the wheels, and drinks and food flew all over everybody. Charlie went skipping backwards down the aisle and fell into the lap of a man reading the Financial Times. "Will you marry me?" he asked kindly. "Yes, certainly," beamed Charlie. So at least somebody was happy they were lost. Henery scampered backwards across the bridge and then ran as fast as he could all the way back to Edinburgh. The crowd at the station was most surprised to see the train reversing at such a great speed. They saw Aaron in his guard's van first, eating the last of his sausage. Then Charlie and her husband, his name was George, it turned out, hanging out of the window and waving. And finally, Jonathan and David, just a little red-faced. And of course, Henery, sweating a lot, but so very excited. The station clock said 12 o'clock exactly, less than 4 hours. Hooray! They'd done it! On this special Monday morning, Henery had run all the way from King's Cross Station to Edinburgh in Scotland, faster than anyone had ever run before. The Provost of Edinburgh, he's like the Lord Mayor in London, only more Scottish, gave Henery a bottle of whisky. He drank half of it, and then shared the rest with Jonathan and David, and of course Aaron, who was looking for more sandwiches. And they all drank a toast to Charlie and George. "What a lot of whisky there is in a bottle," thought Henery, and he felt quite tipsy and very sleepy indeed. So, for the second time in one day, Henery fell asleep in the middle of an official speech. He dreamt how wonderful his run was. He relived every inch of the way, only this time his grandfather, the Express, was watching and congratulating him. Mercifully, he awoke when the Provost of Edinburgh was saying, "And so perhaps you might explain to your fans why you're called Henery." "Of course I will," said Henery amiably, to the cheers of the crowd. "I was named after the great British, heavyweight boxer Henery Cooper, who knocked down Muhammad Ali." To his surprise, the Provost's wife said to herself, a bit too loudly, "Stuff and nonsense! Who ever heard of an engine, or indeed anything important, named after a boxer? I never heard of such a thing." She's not a bit like the Lady Mayoress of St. Margaret's, Henery thought. But he kept it to himself, although he was rather upset. "I suppose you'd be happy if Big Ben or something was named after a boxer," he said sharply to the Provost's wife. "Yes, I would indeed, but that's different," she replied. Henery couldn't resist it. No, it isn't. Big Ben is named after Big Ben Caunt, a great boxer who fought with his bare fists. He lived in the time of Queen Victoria. He was going to add, and so do you. But the poor lady was already so red, he decided to be kind. Never mind. Everyone was so happy. They cheered and cheered because everything had turned out so well. To celebrate, they all joined Aaron Burgess in search of Scottish sandwiches. They are very filling, our Scottish sandwiches. This celebration is going to take a long time, so we'll say good night, Henery, and well done.